Hello, everyone. Thanks, Anders, for the introduction. So, as said, my name is Tarass Vercesuks. I'm HP pre-sales at Also Latvia, and what a weird experience this is. But thanks anyway for attending my session. And let me get straight to the topic what I have today. For the next half an hour, let me talk how HPE can help you to run your virtual machine farms in the most efficient and interesting way. So a couple of years back, we looked hard at the hyperconvergence market. We looked at the portfolio that we have and realized that there is one particular area that might not still be covered. So we revamped our hyperconvergence portfolio, added some new platform which might be interesting for you. So let's take a look at what we have in store. But first, why hyperconvergence is getting popular, especially during the last 5 years. And the main reason is because hyperconvergence is not that much of an architecture. And as you will see later in these slides, even from HPE alone, you have different options to implement it. And then there are some other vendors in the market doing hyperconvergence, and each of them is doing it not in slightly, but in some cases in quite different way. What hyperconvergence really brings you is a new experience, pretty much new way how you approach to managing and maintaining your virtual infrastructure. And the main reason why it started to get popularity and is because it helps you to reduce the day-to-day complexity of the virtual infrastructure, making it easier to support and maintain it. And also, as we learned the hard way during the last 2 years, these things are required because typically virtual administrators of the virtual infrastructures have to take care of a lot of different layers. It's kind of expected from them to know the hypervisor layer, server layer, the storage layer, and the networking layer in between. So you get a lot of responsibility, a lot of tasks at your desk, and not that many resources to accomplish them. So this is what the hyperconvergence tackles. Oh, not going back, but forward. Initially, some first attempts to make the virtual infrastructure simpler have been very much focusing on building it. So the vendors had something called converged architectures, converged systems, etc. But that was mainly just pre-validated configuration that somebody decided which components to include and make it faster for you to get this into your data center. It did very little to actually make the day-to-day operations easier after it is installed. And it also was suitable only for the bigger infrastructures, just because you need to have the certain resources consolidated to make the things work. But then the hyperconvergence came on board, so we realized that we take the software virtualization and we just abstract certain functions that we needed for the virtual infrastructures, mainly the storage functions, and detach it from the hardware resources. If it's software defined, when we control it programmatically, we can automate it. So it brings totally new experience what comes to managing such kind of infrastructure. We can let administrator take care of his virtual machines and not manage the hardware resources that much anymore. And we can also implement various functions and services on the virtual machine layer, something like data protection, disaster recovery, replications, quality of service. And we make the infrastructure modular, just because it has fixed building block, which is providing you compute and storage resources, so we can automate cluster expansions. When you need to grow your virtual cluster, you can just add one node, and there is the software wizard, which allows you to do it for you automatically. So all of a sudden, life was getting easier, life was getting better, and this approach seemed to work very well in a lot of different situations. in a lot of different situations, but not in all of them, because hyperconvergence in the software-defined form works very well for the predictable workloads, for the general purpose server farm, VDIs, where we have a lot of virtual machines and none of them is behaving especially unpredictably, like having a huge data growth. And the previous speaker was talking about a lot of securing data, which means encryption data. And then again, if data is encrypted, does it mean that it cannot be compressed, cannot be deduped? So I suddenly can end up with the virtual machine which needs a lot of storage or has some sudden performance spikes. And this doesn't work very well with this fixed block approach, which covers everything. And then even more and more applications are running outside of my data center, so-called edge computing. I have some data collection apps. I have remote offices where I do not have a lot of facilities. And I might not even have a IT staff there, but I want that to have some part of my infrastructure, which is highly available, which is centrally managed, which is efficient. And after all, I also might have some services running in the cloud, or I would like to use the cloud services to provide my extra data protection, disaster recovery, to store my long-term backup copies, something like that. So you need to combine everything of that, and wouldn't it be nice to bring the hyperconverged experience to all of these different situations? So that's what the HPE approach is. So we have two distinct architectures which are having the hyperconvergence functionality. And by hyperconvergence in this case, we mean this day-to-day administrator experience. It's automated, it's simplified managed, it takes a lot of it takes care of a lot of infrastructure management tasks on behalf of you automatically and allows you to manage your virtual machine farms. One of them, HPE Simplicity, is mainly targeted for these general purpose workloads, remote offices and edge type of environments. Second, HPE NIMBLE Storage DHCI, which HPE brought to the market 2 years back, can really be used as a workhorse in a data center because it's suitable to any workload, no matter how critical it is for you, how high level of performance you have to provide. HPE NIMBLE Storage DHCI can handle it. And on top of that, we have the global intelligence layer, something what we call HPE InfoSight. HPE InfoSight is the automatic global system that collects telemetry data from all of the environments and automates support and provides predictive support capability. This really is the very key component for the hyperconvergence because we have the infrastructure stack which has many different layers. So we really want to make maintenance and support of these environments easy for you. So let's take a look at the HPE Simplicity. Simplicity is more like a classical HCI solution. So you have the ProLiant based, the server beneath the Simplicity node is ProLiant. It can be DL380 or DL325 if you're more into the AMD. With the software-defined storage layer, it can create highly available virtual infrastructure starting from 2 nodes, really small footprint. And if we are going for the DL325 AMD model, the servers are 1U, so you can have your full virtual infrastructure just in 2U. The software-defined storage layer, something what we call the data virtualization platform in Simplicity, is built to provide extra data services, something like built-in data protection and disaster recovery. On a virtual machine level, you can create protection policies and define, do you want to take the local backups? Do you want to take remote backups? So basically send it to Simplicity cluster in some other locations. And as much stuff as possible is automated using either built-in automation or the policies that you create as an administrator. And everything is controlled from the vCenter, so no extra consoles. So this is our way to really simplify the life of the vSphere administrator. Depending on what functions you need and what infrastructure we are building, we can replace a lot of classical data center devices. As I mentioned, the smallest highly available cluster can be just 2 nodes. And in that case, we don't even need top-of-the-rack switch for the data networking. We, of course, provide the hypervisor running on top of these nodes. We provide the storage services with the built-in, always-in deduplication and compression, data protection services. If we are replicating virtual machines, we are replicating them in deduplicated form, so one optimization is not needed as well. And these nodes are available either as all-flash or as hybrid, so you don't need any extra stuff to provide storage performance if required. And if connected to InfoSight, we also optimize the monitoring of the environment. All of these brings us very neat, very smooth environment, which can be really administered easily by the administrator, which is familiar with the vCenter interface, and at the end of the day, brings lowest overall cost during the life cycle of the solution. So the key principles, it's all-in-one systems, global unified management, everything is administered from the vCenter. We do provide one-click upgrades, so all of the firmware, all of the vSphere and the SimpliVity software are updated from the single interface with the single click. We can provide you with the capability to do online technology refresh and expansions. That process is automated as well. The system self-tunes to find the optimal place for your virtual machine from both performance and capacity perspective, and we do provide you InfoSight support for your SimpliVity installations to do predictive analytics and support automation. And why we say that SimpliVity is a very good choice for the edge and why it might be better than some other solutions, then again, because in many cases the hyperconverged platforms do not have that much focus on really being very lean and efficient in very small installs. So something like doing fully featured 2-node installation, that is something that not many of our competitors do. And SimpliVity built-in data protection, of course, is absolutely industry leading. In many situations, we can even make you go away from the typical backup software, because we not only can create the local copies of the virtual machines, we can send them to another SimpliVity cluster, or we can also send them to the HPE StoreOne's device, which is a backup target, all without actually needing the additional backup application. And we try to automate as many things as possible. So this creates a very good platform to actually be deployed in multi-site environments where you might have one central location with the bigger cluster in your data center. And then you just put these small 2-node clusters in remote locations, all centrally managed, no local administration required, and all data protection functions to be sure that your backups are also protected, not just on the local cluster, but replicated to some other location as well. We can even deploy single node SimpliVity cluster if your particular site can survive some downtime in terms of availability of the system. You only care about protecting the data. We can also deploy the single node SimpliVity cluster when, of course, you won't have the VMware HA capability, but we still can put up the virtual machines, configure the policy for the remote backups, and send the data to the central location periodically. And if we start to talk about the data center, then the relatively new platform that we have added 2 years back is NIMBLE Storage DHCI. And it's a funny name, and D stands for the disaggregated. Means that we do build this virtualization cluster from the standard separate components, but we provide all of the tools and automation so it actually works as a hyper-converged infrastructure. And this is the very big difference with the converged architecture type of approach that a lot of vendors have been using previously, because in that environment, you didn't have any automation, you didn't have any automatical deployment, just somebody have built it and pre-installed it for you, but day-to-day operations have been just like any other separately built infrastructure. In this case, we do integrate all of the needed automation tools in a solution to make sure that we provide the same administrative experience. And on top of that, unlike the classical hyperconvergence, we do keep the flexibility to scale and expand the solution in a way which is needed. If you just need to add service, you can just add service. If you just need to add capacity, you can add capacity. And having the NIMBLE storage disk array as a part of this solution allows us to really provide you any level of performance that is required for any of the applications. As you see, all of the main architectural principles are very, very similar to what we have with the simplicity. It's simple to deploy, automated deployment wizard out of the box. You do not need to have any additional tools and install any additional application for that. We also integrate the management completely inside the vCenter. And if you're using vVols, we can also provide VM-centric data services. It's very flexible to scale, and not just flexible in terms that you can add things separately, which you can do for any type of environment, of course, but we also do provide automation for scale. So if you add another server to your DHCI environment, it will be discovered automatically. It will be automatically added to the cluster with just a few clicks. No manual install of the ESXi, no remapping of the volumes, etc. We do provide support automation thanks to the info site up to the virtual machine layer. So you have one phone number to call no matter if the problem is with the hardware network or with the hypervisor. Everything is covered by the single support organization. We can add data protection tools, something which is called Recovery Manager Central, which can automate snapshots and integrate to provide you consistent data copies for your applications, such as Oracle, SQL, or any virtual machine. And we also have the upgrade manager to make sure that we do provide the same automated upgrade experience covering the hypervisor and all of the firmware and the special software layers that are part of the solution the same way as any hyperconverged solution does. So what are the building blocks? There are two ways that you can deploy the DHCI. Greenfield, what we call greenfield, it's completely new order, so you're getting all of the parts as a new install. Or there is the brownfield way, so you can reuse part of your infrastructure, 10G or faster network. We can use what you have already in your data center, and we can reuse some of your existing ProLine servers. But if you go the greenfield way, so the solution is iSCSI based for the data networking. So we do require 2 10G switches. And as a part of the new solution, you can pick among 3 different series. It can be Aruba CX series switches, Flex Fabric switches, or HP Store Fabric M series, which are Mellanox-based Ethernet switches. Management layer. As mentioned, everything is integrated into the vCenter. You do not need to touch disk array management or the server IO management interface separately. And we do provide the special version of the firmware on the disk array to actually include all of the automation tools. All of the setup managers, update managers are actually controlled and run automatically by the special software pieces which are part of the disk array firmware. That way we make them completely hidden. You do not have to install anything. You do not have to administer anything. Everything is kicked in from the vCenter when you perform particular function. We do support vSphere 7.0 and 6.7 for the greenfield installs and 6.5 if you're doing the brownfield install. And you pretty much can pick any ProLiant for the new orders. It can be Gen 10, Gen 10 Plus. AMD Intel based, and we can also reuse some of your Gen 9 servers. If you still are running some of them, we can redeploy them as part of your DHCI cluster. And the storage can be any model of NIMBLE array, hybrid all-flash, and even all NVMe Alletra 6000 box. So just matter of what level of performance and capacity do you need. All is covered by the HP info site. So all telemetry data from all of the layers is sent to HP, analyzed, and we do cover all of the layers of the solution with the single support line. By going this way, what we feel we are able to achieve, we can actually make hyper-converged experience possible for the infrastructures which for the applications which are have not been originally that good fit for the HCI. As I mentioned, a lot of capacity typically is an issue. Also, the bigger we start to scale the hyper-converged cluster, the more extra workload and performance penalty do we have because of the extra storage traffic between the nodes and the overhead on the nodes themselves for doing the storage functions via the software-defined layer. Again, we minimize the risk impact with DHCI approach, and we also are vastly more efficient on the storage capacity layer because we do not have to do the multiple copies of the data across the cluster. We still provide extremely high data protection levels because NIMBLE works with the triple parity plus writes, which means that at any moment in time you have 3 parity drives in your write sets, plus every drive has additional local control sums. So the level of data protection in DHCI solution is absolutely enormous.
5 minutes.
Great, just about as much as I need. So you can start very small. We still want, that was one of the problem of these all the converged architecture systems. What we have managed to improve with the DHCI. So you can start with just 2 nodes in a disk array, typical small configuration. When you need to scale compute, you just add your ESXi host up to 32, maximum which supported with the DHCI cluster. When you need capacity, you expand the capacity of the NIMBLE box. And depending on the model, we can go up to roughly 1 petabyte. And NIMBLE architecture also allows for online upgrade of the controllers. So the performance of the box is completely dependent on the controller model selected. So you can, if you see that you have run out of the performance limit of the initial controller pair, you can just upgrade to the faster controllers. That's also possible. And even if that is not enough, there is a possibility to combine up to 4 disk arrays in a single scale-out group to provide you even more capacity and performance. But for the most customers, that's absolutely not required. What is also good that we do keep the capability to utilize the same disk arrays for other storage functions. It doesn't have to be 100% dedicated for your DHCI cluster. So if you still, for some reason, have to keep some kind of physical hosts for some applications, you can do it. You can provision the storage from the same disk array. If your applications are having some high secondary storage requirements that you run outside of your virtualization cluster, something like video surveillance, we can provision storage from the same storage box. Again, a lot of flexibility comparing to the fixed block hyper-converged approach. So this allows us to really provide both hyper-converged experience and efficiency, because typical HCI, the problem is as soon as it starts to grow, the efficiency really goes down because you probably want to reconfigure it for the beta data protection schemes. Your capacity efficiency lowers. You need a lot of networking ports, a lot of rack space, and a lot of power resources. For the DHCI, we start on a quite efficient level, and we keep this efficiency level just because we can scale the part of the solution which is needed at the moment and not do it in a fixed block approach. So there might be situations where this becomes really important. And just a couple of words about the InfoSight. InfoSight is a global intelligence system that the HP uses with NIMBLE storage, ProLiant, SimpliVity, Trispa, Primera arrays. We collect a lot of telemetry data, but instead of just keeping this data or just looking for some very obvious failure notifications like your disk has failed, we actually run them through the machine learning. We define the fingerprints for the potential issues, and then we analyze the whole install base to see if this fingerprint can be found in some of the installations. So we actually can proactively warn you about potential issue and provide the potential resolution that you can use before you actually hit the downtime. We can also add hypervisor data to the telemetry, and in such a way we see everything up to the virtual machine level. So these predictive notifications not only cover your hardware, they can also cover your virtual infrastructure to help you find problematic VMs with the over-provisioned resources or which are doing some extra high I/O that hurts the rest of your infrastructure. And we do provide these recommendations not in form of some graphs, but in clearly readable, human readable text, so you can easily understand what's actually going on. As a result, the DHCI support is completely automated on the first and second layer. There are no actually first and second level support engineers. This functions completely automated. It provides us the way to very rapidly do root cause analysis and find what may be the reason of the issue, which is very important when we are talking about the full stack installations that go through hypervisor, network, storage, server. We really need to be able to pinpoint which layer is responsible for the current problem. And if you need to call support, if the situation happens like that, because none product can be 100% error-free. First of all, on the many situations, we call you first because we already know that the issue is there. Or when you have to do it yourself, you will be speaking to the level 3 support engineer, which will be ready to start a resolution of the case right away without actually asking you for any extra logs and simulations, etc., etc.
Time.
Finally, we skip the cloud volumes and just a few words. Don't take our word for the fact that this approach works. It's quite recognizable by the market. So HP grew the hyperconvergence business in 2020 more than 50% year over year. The Gartner recognized the disaggregated HCI as a separate architecture type. So it's not just a funny word we invented. And DHCI also got the Best of VMworld 2020 award. If you have any interest in SimpliVity or in DHCI, you can contact us. We have a lot of capabilities to provide you demo environments, to do the sizing, to analyze your existing virtual infrastructures, to see what solutions might be the best fit. Thank you.